Hello and welcome to another episode of The Losers Win Again, and we are going over the top fantasy offseason moves of 2022. And guys, it's been crazy so far, and then we're gonna just go straight into it. We're gonna talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars and their huge spending spree to surround pass catchers around Trevor Lawrence. But before we do that, hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell if you like any of the content that I've been dishing out. And but let's go ahead and move on to the Jacksonville Jaguars and their top offensive signings. Christian Kirk has signed a 4-year deal with the Jacksonville Jaguars worth up to $84 million on Monday. Kirk played the best season of his career in 2021, and he parlayed it into a massive payday on the open market. The Jaguars have plenty of money to spend this offseason, and they have been big spenders so far in this free agency period. The 25-year-old caught 77 of his 103 targets for 982 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns in 17 games. This is a lot of money for a receiver that hasn't had a 1,000-yard season in his 4-year career. Kirk is moving into a less explosive offense with a downgrade at QB, and he'll be competing for targets with Marvin Jones, Laviska Shenault, Zayjones, just to name a few. I don't think this is a very good signing. I still think Christian Kirk is a wide receiver 3 at best. I don't think this is going to be a signing that really impacts his fantasy value. Yes, he will be the number 1 wide receiver there, but he was the number 1 wide receiver in Arizona for majority of the year last year, and he couldn't get the job done. DeAndre Hopkins wasn't there most of the 2021 season, and Kirk just couldn't get the job done. He's not a number 1 wide receiver. I don't know if he ever will be. But it's going to be interesting to see. I'm not taking many chances on this Jacksonville offense. I got to believe it to see it. In my opinion, I would not be drafting Christian Kirk. Now we move on to Evanengram, who signed a 1-year, fully guaranteed $9 million deal that could go up to $10 million with incentives. The Jaguars are going all in on the free agency market. As we discussed, they signed Christian Kirk as well. $84 million deal with him. They're trying to get Trevor Lawrence more passing weapons. And Ingram, he's a decent tight end. And we noticed Trevor Lawrence really liked throwing to the tight ends last year, which makes me think that Ingram catching 46 of his 73 targets for 408 yards and 3 touchdowns in 15 games for the Giants last year is going to catapult his fantasy value. We'll discuss that here in a little bit, but the 27-year-old was a Pro Bowler in 2020. He is fast and athletic for the position, and he's never really reached his true potential due to injuries and drops. Ingram should see plenty of targets in his new home, but fantasy managers shouldn't overpay for him as a tight end 1. He's definitely a tight end 2, someone to hold on your bench if you're playing in best ball leagues. If you want to stack Jaguars players, go right for it. But it's definitely not something I'm considering. I was real high on the potential of what Trevor Lawrence could be in 2022, but now that I'm seeing the moves that they're making, I'm not all too excited. Christian Kirk, Evanengram have both disappointed in their positions. They've both been in the league around the same amount of time. I think Ingram's been in the league a little bit longer than Kirk. 1 season longer than Kirk has. And they both just never have lived up to the hype. And I'm just not too excited about it. I'm not going to be drafting these guys. Then we move on to zayjones, who's just another guy I'm just not that excited about. He's never done anything to shock me. While he only averaged 3.5 fantasy points in 2021, he had maybe, let's see here, he had one game over 15 fantasy points, and it was the last week of the season against the Colts, where he had 19.9 fantasy points. Other than that, his best game was against Cleveland when he had 12.7 fantasy points. Just not very impressive. Wide receiver Zayjones has agreed to a 3-year deal with Jacksonville. He will at least earn $24 million with the potential to make up to $30 million with incentives. The 26-year-old hasn't lived up to his expectations throughout his 6 seasons of service in the National Football League. So he's been in the league longer than Christankirk and Evanengram, and he still hasn't done anywhere near the effects of Kirk or Ingram. I'm not impressed by this signing. I mean, you look at what Detroit gave DJ Chark. $10 million for 1 year with $12 million in incentives. This is not a good look for the Jaguars. They look like they're just throwing money at players that want to go there, and I'm just not impressed by it. Drop in the comments and tell me what you think. Are these 3 signings good for the Jaguars, or are they just throwing money at random players? Let me know what you think. As we discussed briefly, is this money well spent? Like I said before, Christankirk was a wide receiver 26 in all fantasy wide receivers last year. He was ranked 29th in the league in touchdowns with 5. He's ranked 24th in the league with 982 receiving yards. Ranked 5th in the league in contested catch rate for 60%, and he was ranked 58th in the league with 6 drop passes. Look, Christankirk is a fine wide receiver. I just don't think he's a number 1, and I think the Jaguars overpaid for him. He had his career year in 2021. He played in 17 games, started in 11 of them. He had 77 receptions, 103 targets, 982 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns. His longest pass caught last year was 50 yards. He had a 9.5 yards per target rate, and he had a 12.8 yards per reception rate, which is pretty good. He only rushed the ball 1 time, and he averaged 12.2 fantasy points last year in PPR format. Look, this guy is a bona fide wide receiver 3, a good flex play. And now that he's on the Jaguars, I understand he's a number 1. He was a number 1 most of last year. Just don't see how he can be very profitable. Don't overdraft on Christankirk. It's nothing to get excited about. And then we move on to Evanengram. Evanengram played in 15 games in 2021. He started in 12 of them. 46 receptions off of 73 targets, 3 touchdowns. His longest catch of the year was 30 yards. He had a 5.6 yards per target rate. He had an 8.9 yards per reception rate, -3 rushing yards, and he only averaged 3.8 fantasy points per game. Hold on, let's fix this. PPR, he averaged 6.8 fantasy points per game, and a career average of 10.5 fantasy points per game. Look, in 2019, he kind of reached his potential. We saw something good in him. He averaged 13.7 fantasy points per game, but he only played 8 games that year. So, all in all, if I had to pick out of the 3, I think Evanengram would be the one I'm most excited about because Trevor Lawrence does favor the tight ends. But as of right now, Evanengram is not a number 1 tight end. Yeah, you might want to hold him on the bench, but I'm not spending a big draft pick on him, and I probably won't be drafting him in best ball drafts either. Zay Jones, they overpaid this guy. This is a ridiculous contract, 3-year deal. There's always those ridiculous contracts in every sport, baseball, basketball, football, where these guys just get overpaid. And then in a year from now, Zay Jones probably won't even be a Jaguar. It's tough to say. I mean, he had a good little run at the end of the year, but that was with Derek Carr throwing the ball. Now he has Trevor Lawrence. I'm not sold on Zay Jones. I don't think anybody should be sold on Zay Jones. No one should be drafting Zay Jones. He should be a waiver wire pickup if someone like Kirk gets hurt, which is very likely. And yeah, just don't waste your time on him. But let's see whose fantasy stocks are going up due to these signings. And you might be surprised who I got on there. Believe it or not, there's some Jaguars players' fantasy stocks that are on the rise. Some could be for good reasons, some could be for bad, but we're going to discuss both right here, right now. But first, let's go over this Jacksonville starting rotation here. Now, this could change because we're still in the free agency period. We're still in offseason where there's players that are going to be drafted, trades, yada yada. But right now, this is what, if the Jaguars were to have to take the field today, this is what their starting offense would look like. You got Trevor Lawrence, the quarterback, James Robertson at running back, Christian Kirk at wide receiver, Marvin Jones, wide receiver 2, Zay Jones, wide receiver 3. And I really doubt Zay Jones is going to be the starting wide receiver 3. Laviska Shenault is a way better player than Zay Jones, in my opinion. And then you got tight end Evan Engram. I'm not going to discuss the offensive line because this is a player fantasy stocks on the rise. But yeah, let's go ahead and talk about it. I think the person that benefits the most from these free agent acquisitions so far is Trevor Lawrence. He's going to be able to spread the ball around a lot better than he did last year. First of all, he didn't have DJ Chark after week 4. I think people would have had a better impression on Trevor Lawrence if he would have had DJ Chark all year, if he would have had Travis Etienne all year. That's somebody else that nobody's going to be talking about that's going to be coming back from injury that I'm real excited about. But player stocks that are on the rise, Trevor Lawrence, I think he's going to have a big bounce back year. A lot of people say rookies have sophomore slumps. I think Trevor Lawrence is going to have a sophomore spike year, and he's going to hit the fantasy drafts high. Christian Kirk, I think people are going to overdraft him. His stock is on the rise for a bad reason. Do not draft Christian Kirk as a wide receiver 1, as a wide receiver 2. He's a fringe wide receiver 3, in my opinion. Marvin Jones, he's going to be a great flex play, a great bench play when players are on bye next year. Marvin Jones is going to be a good guy to key in. I think he could benefit the most out of Christian Kirk becoming a Jaguar, and I can't wait to see what Marvin Jones does next year with this Jaguars offense. And then you got Evan Engram on there. I think his stock's going to rise for a bad reason. He'll end up being the starter, but honestly, he's a little more athletic than Dan Arnold, but I think Dan Arnold is a better tight end than Evan Engram as a whole. But we'll have to wait and see. I'm kind of excited to see what Evan Engram will offer this Jaguars offense. Doug Peterson, he's made tight ends into what they are today. Guys like Zach Ertz, guys like Dallas Goedert, just to name a few. I'm sure he's helped a lot of other receivers in his time in football. So maybe this is a career resurrection for Evan Engram. But as of right now, I just want to see what it's going to look like. And I can't wait for the 2022 season to start. But yeah, drop in the comments. Tell me what y'all think. Do you think Christian Kirk is a high draft pick next year? Do you think Trevor Lawrence is going to have a bounce back year? Do you think that Evan Engram is going to be the next Dallas Goedert, the next Zach Ertz? Drop down in the comment section and let me know. Yeah, but there you have it for the losers win again. Don't forget to hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell if you like the content. And also don't forget I have a Patreon, an Instagram, and a TikTok down in the description below. Thanks for watching the losers win again, and we will see you next time on this free agent frenzy off season. Tons of stuff happening, so stay tuned.